In the last hour, prosecutors have held their first news conference, and during that they confirmed that they have started a manslaughter and shipwreck investigation. But they stressed that it was in the very early stages and that they are not investigating anyone specifically at the moment.
The Italian prosecutor Ambrosio Cartosio outlined the current situation.
I would like to officially communicate to you that the prosecutor of the Termini Imeresi has hypothesized that there could be, in fact, a question of manslaughter. But this is just, in fact, the beginning of the inquiry. Generally, a prosecutor is never satisfied to give this information at this stage, precisely because, in fact, the developments, as far as the inquiry are concerned, could in fact change. We cannot exclude anything.
10 days have passed since the tragic sinking of the BAYESIAN superyacht off the coast of Sicily at the time this video was made. While there have been no real updates yet about the recovery of the sunken vessel, the investigation into the incident itself is already underway and has been for some days. Members of the BAYESIAN's crew have been placed under investigation, and new information has come forward about the timeline of events, specifically the last few minutes before the sinking. News reports have also shown where on the yacht the divers would eventually come to find those who were missing. Various news sites have now reported that a black box, or AIS, that's Automatic Identification System, was recovered from the sunken vessel, which, after examination, has shed light on the final 16 tragic minutes leading to BAYESIAN's loss of power and eventual sinking. At 3:50 AM on Monday, August 19th, it stated BAYESIAN began to shake as it encountered the fierce storm. At 3:58 AM, the yacht's anchor gave way and the vessel began to take on water. Just 7 minutes later, at 4:05 AM, BAYESIAN disappeared into a blackout and was dragged 358 metres. It is stated on the Daily Record website that the blackout was probably due to waves reaching the generator or even the engine room. A minute later, at 4:06 AM, the yacht emitted an emergency GPS signal notifying the Coast Guard that the vessel had sank. It is no surprise that questions have been raised about how the superyacht sank so quickly, and this, of course, is the prime focus of the current investigation. This image from the Sun website shows the locations where those who lost their lives were found. It is stated that other than the yacht's chef, Ricardo Thomas, who was the first to be recovered, and Hannah Lynch, who was the last, all other bodies were located in the same place, BAYESIAN's first cabin, which was the crew's quarters. Hannah would later be found in the third cabin. As stated on Reuters, first interviewed was the ship's captain, James Cutfield, under investigation for manslaughter and shipwreck. A few days later, 2 members of the crew were also placed under investigation. James Cutfield remained silent with police during his interviews, with one of his lawyers stating he was too shaken up to answer their questions. Being investigated does not imply guilt and does not mean any charges will follow, but rather is an integral part of the investigation process, and officials are not excluding other lines of inquiry. Having lost his passport in the disaster, Cutfield was granted a new one and was set to leave Italy with his wife the next day. Reuters also states that the other 2 crew members under investigation are ship engineer Tim Parker Eaton and sailor Matthew Griffith. Like Cutfield, neither of them are obligated to stay in Italy, though all of them had to nominate a lawyer so that authorities have a way of contacting them. In an article on the New York Post website, Franco Romani, one of the people to help design the BAYESIAN, told an Italian newspaper, "The yacht was built to go to sea in any weather. adding he believed a side hatch was left open and allowed water to pour in. Giovanni Constantino, the CEO of Italian Sea Group, said the boat must have sank due to indescribable, unreasonable errors. The captain should have prepared the boat and put it in a state of alert and of safety. Ask yourself, why weren't the Porticello fishermen out that night? A fisherman checks the conditions and a ship doesn't? The disturbance was completely readable on all weather maps. It was impossible not to know.
Speaking exclusively to Sky News, the chief executive of the company that owns the firm that built the yacht has made a series of explosive accusations, alleging there were failings on board.
Perché nessuno è uscito in mare?
Why did no one go out to sea? Everyone knew about the storm. And then, if a fisherman knew, why was the captain of such a ship of such importance, with guests of such level and importance, with 12 guests on board, why wasn't he in an alert situation?
It must be stressed again that being investigated is in no way a sign of guilt, but is rather a mandatory part of the investigation process. Still, the manner of the event, how the yacht sank, and the short timeline of its sinking were always going to raise questions and eyebrows. It also transpired that Stephen Chamberlain, Mike Lynch's co-defendant in the recent US fraud trial for the selling of his company to Hewlett-Packard in 2011, for which they were both acquitted on 15 charges, had been fatally struck by a car around the same time Lynch himself was reported missing. Lynch was aboard Bayesian with family, friends and colleagues to celebrate his acquittal. With no comments from the yacht's captain, and the investigation still in its very early stages, just like the no doubt eventual recovery of the Bayesian to the surface, the unravelling of this disaster may take some time.